Let's try this one more time. Welcome back. It is I, Anthony Mueller, the wine advocate reviewer for Washington State and South Africa. I have a very talented guest who will be joining me momentarily. We had some little connection issues at the beginning. Let's see if we can mesh this out. I have Anna Schafer from àMaurice, really talented, fantastic winemaker. And we have her. Let's add her in. Are having a fantastic Wednesday. Napa finally has some beautiful, fresh air and blue skies, which is always reassuring for everyone's air quality.
There we go. Hey. Sorry about that.
How are you?
Doing good. Doing good.
Fantastic. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that you're a very busy person and you have a lot of things going on, and life is life. 2020 is what it is. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join me. For those of our viewers and guests who don't know who you are or much about àMaurice, can you please give us a quick background and bio about yourself and the winery?
My name is Anna Schafer, and we have a little vineyard over in Walla Walla called àMaurice. The vineyard itself is kind of a pretty great spot. First, I'll start talking about the vineyard. It's very grounding. And then we can talk about me, because it's just, there's not much to talk about. But so the vineyard it sits about 1,500 feet in elevation. It's southwest facing, and it's just gorgeous. It overlooks the Blue Mountains. Beautiful. And we bought that property in 2004 next to the Gordy Winery at Walla Vintners and Miles. And the neighbors to the north of us were Chris Figgins and Leonetti. And so when we first got the land, we're a family winery. We do everything kind of together. We're like, it's like bunch ball, winery bunch ball. And when we originally were looking at the piece of property, we thought to ourselves, we just wanted, we wanted to know that we could make really high-end, really good wine, really high-quality wine that we wanted to drink. That was the main goal. It was really, really selfish. So we
didn't have high standards.
Yeah, I know. And we were like, well, it's next to Leonetti. It should be all right. Yeah. And I remember being in a meeting with, or I think it was Alan Shoup was speaking about properties and really what's the most exciting spot in all of Washington. And he kept describing this land. And I looked at somebody and I'm like, where is he talking about? And the person just hit me. They're like, your vineyard. And I'm like, oh, right. That's awesome. But it's a really incredible spot because it's above the Missoula flood line. It actually is all windblown loess. And it's got the bedrock sits and it kind of rolls up, and the bedrock sits at the bottom. It's on about 60 feet of gravel, but the loess is only about 10 feet, which is a lot of loess. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of loess. But when it rolls up to the top of the vineyard, you get more and more of the bedrock than you do the gravels. So it is. It's got a really incredible layer of cliche that goes through it as well. And it's just a happy little place. We also have, we're moving towards more estate only, but in the past, we've also bought from several growers as well that we just absolutely love working with and learning from, really. And so I keep talking about we, I haven't talked about us yet. So my family, the winery was my father's idea. I was in LA at the time and he called me and said, hey, do you want to, come up and look at this piece of property that I've got going on? And I was young at the time, quite young. And so not with my silvers now, I can kind of, I think you too, so you got the young silvers. And I know, I love them. And people are finally starting to listen to me. And so anyway, so I came up with the intent of just like kind of helping and I remember Gordy Winery, he was like kind of our mentor at the time. And helping us out. And I tasted through the wines with him, and I said, you know, this, and this, and he looks at me and he's just like, you're going to be just fine. Like, just, you're going to figure it out. You're going to be able to make it, and you're going to be just fine. And so with that blessing, we really kind of went for it. And we found Ken Hart, who is our grower and is just been like the very, you know, I don't know if you've met Kenny, but he's the best. But he's been really the driving factor of why we've been able to make the wines that we have out of our vineyard. And so we melded together and we planted the vineyard in 2006.
Awesome. And this all, I remember hearing a story. This all started after your dad found or tried a very rare bottle of Bordeaux back in the 70s. Was it 73? Yeah. Was it?
My dad loved making alcohol out of a lot of things. I remember one time in college, he was in his limoncello phase, and he comes out with these bowls of ice cream for my brother and I. He's like, I made limoncello. You have to sit and try it. And these ice cream bowls are sitting there. He's like, I'm gonna go get it, and gets it and comes back. And he pours the limoncello into the ice cream bowl, and it like bored a hole through the ice cream because he forgot to cut the Everclear with water. So it just was like straight feeding his college age kids. I don't know. It was hilarious. And then at one point in the 70s, he wanted to buy a rhubarb farm, rhubarb winery. My dad is he's kind of a visionary in this type of, and when he saw the wine industry really kind of bustling and bubbling and all this stuff is going on, and he kind of wanted to be a part of the excitement as well as the trying to make, and he knew and we're all really picky people. Yeah. So he knew between like all of us and our, you know, idiosyncratic pickiness, that we would be able to create something that would be for the table and enjoyable for people. So it was fun to do as a family.
Yeah, it was a wise call. Awesome. And a little bit about yourself.
Oh, just a good listener. I just try and when I started the winery with him when I was 25, and with my family when I was 25. And so it really was kind of wine business by fire. I had no really real strong understanding of anything at 25. I think your brain finally fuses at 25. So that was what was going on. And then, but you know, just hard work. I just really worked as hard as I could. I randomly mentioned to a friend, Chris Figgins actually, that I wanted to go work in Argentina. And he said, well, that's really interesting. I just got off the phone with Paul Hobbs, and he, you know, maybe you could reach out to him and go down there. And I think at the time I had told Paul that I was just going to get on a plane and try to get on a picking line, which if you've ever been to Argentina during harvest, you know that is like the most rigorous, and the way they pick is so hard on your body. Quick. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. I mean,
they're machines.
Yeah. And I just don't think there's no way I could have kept up. But I did talk to Paul, and he gave me, I was his first intern at Viña Cobos. Mm-hmm. And learned quite a bit there, and did that for a couple of years. And then during like the off vintage, I'd go down for harvest, and it really did open my eyes to the industry and really the love, like my, you know, obviously the business of wine is interesting, but really I think every winemaker will speak to this. The real fun is the month, you know, or, you know, a couple months leading up to harvest. For sure. And harvest. And
all the energy, all the years. Yeah. Like it's finally coming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And also like just standing in the vineyard and feeling the energy of the vines. I know it sounds corny, but there's this really big vibrancy that happens.
I agree. I felt it.
Yeah, and also like for some reason with cherry orchards, I don't know if you've been in a cherry orchard during
Yeah.
harvest, but that's another one that's like you just feel apples seem to be a little bit more chill. I don't really know. But but there's like a really there's just kind of this hustle and bustle and it's so I did that for a couple of years and then came back to Walla Walla with a million more questions and kept reading. And so I was a practically trained winemaker, or I
Awesome.
am a practically trained winemaker.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a pretty remarkable past that's led you to connect with some of the icons from Washington and Argentina. Um, what do you think has been some of the most long-lasting um, lessons that you've learned from your time spent uh, dealing and kind of working alongside these icons?
I think when we came to the valley, Norma Kibben gave us a bottle of wine that said "High tide floats all boats," and he drew a little tide with a little boat on it, and we still have that in our on our refrigerator. Um, I think that Walla Walla really was what embraced us and really gave a lot to us. It's just in a really incredible community of of winemakers and just people in general. So we really were, you know, enveloped by, I think, you know, I remember the first time like Chris Figgin called me sis or, you know, like, and, you know, just, it was just this, it's just a community that we really just, I mean, I could, there's a million people that really helped us frame what, you know, you always have an idea of what you want to do,
Yeah.
but you getting there and how does that actually, what is the detail and where does, how does one do this? And is it okay to do that? And you don't want to, you know, you really, you're coming in as a foreigner really to Walla Walla. We wanted to make sure that we didn't, you know, offend the community and make sure we really were trying to be as community minded as possible. And I think that's been was a really was I don't think we would well we still wouldn't be able to do what we wanted to do without their support, without this community support, and also just the winemakers that we've met along the way. There's some pretty incredible people there. I mean, and nobody really. It was amazing. Nobody really wanted us to fail
Yeah.
when we came in.
Yeah.
I remember Christoph like saying, you know, make sure you only plant 3 acres at a time. You know, don't, you know, make sure you go slow and know what you have, and you don't know your vineyard yet. So what are you learning? And I think that's the biggest thing about wine is you can have, you know, you can think you know everything when you don't, you know.
Yeah.
Next
That's
vintage is totally different. And
exactly.
the only
Yeah.
person I think that really does know everything is Tegan Pasalacqua. He's like,
Right.
his retention is amazing.
Yeah. It's
But
you're not the first person to bring up Tegan. In fact, you're the third now. But yeah,
he's a genius.
he's a pretty smart guy. Pretty smart
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So there are many reasons to be happy about all of the expressions in your wine. You seem to have this natural um, knack for capturing freshness, vibrancy, intention, and sense of place all at the same time, all at the same moment, and capture that freshness, and it ends up in the bottle. There have been other bottles, other bottles wine, you know, that are pleasing, but sometimes the fruit component of those wines they kind of smear, they kind of blend into one another. Yours has this precision and focus that I find utterly pleasing. And what do you essentially try to achieve every year when crafting your wine, trying to capture that freshness? Is there any specific thing that you're always on the lookout for?
Picking time.
Yeah.
I think picking time really is, in fact, that's one of the motivations to kind of move towards just the estate is really to be able to kind of especially with Viognier, you and you even see it in the cluster, obviously. I don't know, you've seen a Viognier cluster. I'll explain. Yeah. Maybe everyone's seen a Viognier cluster. But if you look at it, there's the cluster itself has such you're always wanting to go for uniformity when you're doing really anything in farming in general. Like you want everything to ripen at the same time. You want the canopies to look like they're managing well, and managing together as like a group. You don't, or at least as a block, you don't want, at least that's been our approach. We don't want it to be, well, this plant's really struggling and this plant's throwing, 6 tons to the acre.
For sure.
So you're really trying to manage for uniformity. So when you get like that, but then you're looking at like the uniformity and ripeness, you add a massive layer of complexity that is almost unmanageable. And even in Viognier, like you really can't look at the one cluster or even the group of clusters. You have to really look at it like a unit. And so we do these massive vineyard samples. I mean, like almost borderline ridiculous. And I think that really helps, like, okay, so we're really looking at and doing it like, I think Kenny once said, like, if you keep sampling them, you're not gonna have anything to pick. Like we do it like multiple times and like really figure out, okay, how hot is it and how fast is that vineyard ripening, and feel the plant. Is it performing photosynthesis? What times is it performing and then make sure you get your pick calls in early so you get the morning pick. You're not picking in the bright hot sunshine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. You can't cool that fruit down fast enough when it gets in the house. Yeah. And so I think that's the biggest, I would say, if you're going to be really focusing on anything, getting the right tools and getting your pick times nailed down.
Cool. So speaking of pick times and having everything try to be ripe at the same time, and you saying that you have a lot of, you take massive samples. I'm assuming you're using instrumentation and technology. Do you ever just go by the gut, and as you're walking through or tasting these grapes, do you ever just say, what, I feel this needs like a day or two more, or I'm gonna rely on my instrumentation?
Well, the one thing that is kind of awkward is with Syrah specifically. No, with Viognier, Viognier, you're really smelling the juice. Like I use instrumentation, but I actually don't. The only thing that I really get militant about in terms of bricks or acid is rosé. Like rosé is just gross if you pick it over 22 bricks, in my opinion. Yeah. So, and actually 22.5 is my favorite, but like but everything else, it really has to do with like, you take the skins and you kind of like rub them and you can see how much color's coming off. Mm-hmm. That, and also looking at the seeds, just seeing if like there's some years where that little green streak never goes away. Yeah. But they're, looking to see how they're ripening, especially with Syrah, you really do want to look at the seeds for ripeness, because I think the seeds will tell you way faster than the skins will on Syrah. Mm-hmm. But I think there's no real overall, there's no real at one point when I was in my career, I was like, oh, dead leaf. When it smells like a dried, a dry November day where it's crisp and, I used to think that, but honestly, at that point, I think the wines have gone too far. Yeah. So I've actually brought it way back from there. Viognier is really aggressive in juice form. It can smell almost like just you've ripped a green banana. Obviously, You're not going to pick that. There's some pretty obvious ones, but in terms of subtlety, I think you you really do have to just, I mean, I've been with other winemakers, you know, in the vineyard during harvest, and they're like, they just walk through the vineyard and they just think to themselves, oh, it's ready. I mean, there's a really great friend of mine who I love dearly. He just would go out there and just be like, well, they're, you know, they're turning a little yellow. Okay, I think I'm gonna pick it. You know, it's, I've never been that talented, to be honest. My theory is if it comes in and it's not pretty close to perfect, it's hard. I'm not an enologist. Like, it's hard for me to make it something that it's not.
Sure.
And so, so I always erred on the side of being like a nutball before, and try to make, you know, the best pick decisions, get the best fruit we can. Because if you don't get the best fruit, making good wine out of that, it's you can do it. Yeah. It's just really labor intensive and actually kind of complicated, and it's well above what I know how to do. So I just never, we just really, we hyper focus on the vineyard.
For sure. Yeah. I've worked in some of the best restaurants in the nation, and it's very easy to make excellent food when you work with the best ingredients, and you have technical know-how to take what is this and translate it into this amazing piece of artwork. So yeah. So all this talk about wine is making me really, really thirsty, I tell you what. So we've got some wine to try. We're going to start off with the Estate Syrah, the Fred, the 2018. So we've got this guy here, which is from your estate, the Fred. Beautiful little hummingbird on there. Mm-hmm. Why don't you go ahead and introduce this wine and talk about it, and discuss why you wanted to try this wine today.
Well, all the wines that we're trying today are from the estate, because I mean, it's pretty great. But the Syrah, yeah, I mean, you know, this is me talking things up. And the Syrah is probably one of my favorite things to make, because it is, we kind of, it always comes in the door. The Merlot comes in, when we used to have Dionysus used to always come in first, because it's on a really silty, sandy site out near the Columbia, Hanford Reach area. And it always, for some reason, came in almost 3 weeks ahead of everything else. And this one it comes in about like it's just a couple weeks out, but it just is, it really, to me, it wakes, because the Dionysus came in so early that when the Syrah came in, it always just felt like this was harvest started, because it was just this really fun thing to do. And what we do is whole cluster. Making whole cluster fruit is my favorite. I think I would make everything whole cluster if I could. And you put it in these small, we put it in these small 2-ton little jacketed tanks that are called B tanks. Well, each one of them has got a different name, but they're different rock stars. I think those little B tanks are Mick, Bono, Bob. Anyway, I can't remember it. Like the names. Jimmy,
cool.
And Jimmy. But anyway, they're like
Seattle.
I know, of course. Anyway, they're these cute little B tanks, and we obviously gas the heck out of it and throw some dry ice in there. But then you just throw the whole cluster in, and then just do a little layer, you know, a foot or 2 feet of whole berry, and then it's like magic. It just makes these happy wines. And we do a little tiny bit of foot treading once it takes hold on fermentation. They're spontaneous to begin with, but we've had them tested in Saccharomyces. You know, some commercial strain of Saccharomyces is finishing them. Yeah. But we just, it's just a really, you know, kind of a simple way to make wine. And we monitor it aggressively. We make sure that we blanket it every night, and you just have to, it's an incredibly reductive way of making wine. So that's why that's how we try and keep and then we don't rack. And it basically stays mostly in puncheons, but we also use barrique. And then uh, and the way we blend is all the wine stays in its own barrel, so we blend by the barrel. And yeah, and that's
I don't know if you've been watching, but all I've been doing is just smelling this because
I know.
it's so aromatic and beautiful. I have yet to taste it today.
So the crew cut, the one thing I do really think is the crew cuts the lavender almost the same, like right before we usually pick Syrah. And they lay it all in the downwind, and they lay it all up into the rows of the Syrah. And it's a lot of lavender. It's like 15,000 plants of lavender. And I'm wondering if them doing that has had an impact, because ever since they've started doing that, and by the way, they really don't like doing it. Lavender's lovely when it's like a little satchel,
Yes.
but when you are smelling it and it's all over, I remember
everywhere.
I went down. Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah.
I remember I went down and I said, "Hey guys, do you want to take some home for your wives?"
Like, no.
And they were like, "Absolutely not. We would never look at this stuff again. It's horrible." But anyway, so they lay it up in there, and I think it has an impact, because in the last 5 years, the wines have changed, and there is like a lavender note that I can't manage for. Like, I don't know how that. I don't know. Or a violet note.
That higher proportions of whole cluster over time will kind of accentuate that. But yeah, it really has like a floral note to it, but there's like this ripe, juicy expression without being like jammy. It's just like fresh. It's like if you've ever like had the opportunity to bite into a fresh plum at its optimum ripeness.
Yeah.
Like, not like where it's like part of it's still kind of like bitey and like it's a little underripe, or when you bite into it and the skin just rips off because it's a little overripe. Like that perfect ripeness. When you have a piece of fruit like that, whether it's like a peach or a plum or an apple, when it's perfectly ripe, you remember that for the rest of your life, because that's the fruit that you'll judge all other fruit against. That one piece of fruit that I had, on Jimmy's, porch, it was perfect, and you have this sincerity and like precision in the fruit, that it's like it's not smeared. It's just like it's so precise and so vivid. It's beautiful, it's stunning. It's really, really good.
Oh, thank you.
I do think that whole cluster has definitely helped.
Yeah, no, it's the only way. I would never ever go back to destemming Syrah. I just think it the other thing that I think is unique about it is it's gone. That was the last bottle. Is the fact that when you use the stems, there's so much tannin that comes from the stems, that's 80% of the tannin in a cluster of fruit comes from the stems. And
Oh,
there you go. Sorry, somebody tried calling me.
No,
are we okay? Are we back on? That was weird. And so I hope nobody else tries to call me. But anyway, so the stems really allow you to not have to oak it at all. I think the other thing with Syrah that people tend to do is Syrah and I remember in the beginning making this mistake a million times. It just sucks up the oak sweetness. Like I think it's the way that the tannins get caramelized with the fire when they're making the barrels, that it there's a note that just really sucks that up in the Syrah. I don't know what chemistry wise why that would be, but it just so I try and stay as far away from new oak with Syrah as possible.
I think if you were destemming and you're going for a more generous style of Syrah, I think then using medium to medium plus toasted oak it makes sense in that that context. Awesome, cool. Anything else you want to talk about the Fred before we move on?
I think Trey just asked if it's 100% whole cluster. No, it's not 100%, Trey. it's like I can show it. It's like 2 feet of whole berry, and then everything else will cluster.
Semi-carbonic.
And hi. I haven't seen him in forever. I miss him.
Yeah, he was on a few weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we had fun.
lucky.
He had some bad lighting on him though. He looked really washed out. Poor guy.
No, he's never washed out. He's
Yeah.
a handsome fellow.
Oh, no, for sure. He had some bad lighting. But let's go on to the night owl.
Yes.
Get the night owl. So this is kind of like it's like a Wright's Bank style, where it's 56% Merlot, 21% Cab Franc, 16% Petit Verdot, and 7% Cabernet Sauvignon. Also estate. So go ahead and talk about this one and tell us why you decided to taste it today as well.
This was a bit of a, I don't know. Have you ever worked with your family before? It's always it's always like this kind of
the give and take. It's like, you're my boss, you're my parent.
You're like and I remember my dad being like, so we're gonna plant 3 acres of Merlot, and I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of Merlot. Like, and but he was totally right. I mean, it's this, for some reason, we don't have any fancy clones. They're all the traditional Washington clones. It's 8 Cab, I think it's 15 Merlot.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was, I think that the Cab Franc, it doesn't even have a number because there wasn't any other options. And then, so anyway, so they're not like fancy, none of the plant material is particularly fancy, but this particular Merlot, and I think Merlot in general, in Washington specifically, and I don't know necessarily that you see this as dramatically in other parts of the world as you do in Washington, but if you plant it in the hot, like, sandy loess, it really, or excuse me, loam, it really expresses itself differently than if you plant it up high up in like mountain fruit, like where we are, up 1,500 feet. My dad just nailed it. Like, it's like this black cherry, kind of this dark, almost brooding note, and that's why we called it night owl, because it was this just kind of intense, but soft at the same time, kind of this very delicate but very, very intense fruit. So we bottle it as a kind of my dad's wine, Right Bank. And then the Petit Verdot that we get off there is so high toned and floral that it just marries so well with, I think everyone talks about Petit Verdot being so tannic and kind of dark and brooding, but ours, it's like the opposite. The Merlot is really dark and brooding, and the Petit Verdot is this just very, very, very high toned and pretty wine. And then the Cab Franc just gives it a lot of, character. Cab Franc's always such a character.
I concur. I had the same exact conversation with Lewis Skinner of Bit's Family about Petit Verdot, and he showed me about the same percentage. It was, I think, 14 to 16% Petit Verdot in one of his blends. I looked at it and I said, I was tasting it. I was like, it was Petit Verdot, and it's like, yeah, it seems like it's around like that 5 to 7%. I was like, no, it's actually about double that. And I said, double? It's like, no, like, that would mean it would be more tannic. He goes, no, it's actually just the place, just where it comes from.
where
and
you
there
plant
are pockets. Yeah, there are like little pockets within Washington where Petit Verdot becomes so floral and elegant, and is a complete shift in the dynamics of massive, big, bold, tannic into floral, soft, and expressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you've captured the same exact thing here. It's great.
Trey is really chatty. He's asking another question.
Yeah, I don't see him on this end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the Petit Verdot really does do an incredible job of I don't know why, of kind of like, I think Washington State in general, this is what you find, is that you can take the same clone and plant it in like, there's just so much variety here of plantable area. I mean, and so I think that you really do get these huge swings in expression
For sure.
that you wouldn't necessarily find in other also because our AVA is huge too, right?
It's yeah. I mean,
that's
Columbia
another.
Valley as a whole, I think
It's like a whole state.
It is really. It's like for people who don't know what Columbia Valley AVA really correlates to, it's like Cava, like the Cava. Cava.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah. It's basically the entire country of Spain. When you
That's
think
just
about
Spain.
it. It's like yeah. It's like Columbia Valley is pretty much the majority of the state of Washington.
Yeah.
But I find the wines that come from specific locations from estate properties, they have that minerality, that attention to detail, the mineral tension, and the focus, the sense of place, which is always so pleasing. What I really enjoy about the Night Owl is Merlot still, I think, is recovering from getting a bad name from so many years ago, but I agree with you. It has that black cherry, but it also has like this black raspberry, like floral lift through the mid palate. That's really, really great. And then some of the oak tones, that sweet kind of slight caramely, it kind of lays into the mid palate as it goes into the finish, and it's really well crafted and well done. It's beautiful wine.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that the oak usage for this is about 40%, and we really, you really do have to monitor what you're going to use,
Yeah.
And find not only the Cooper, but the barrel that really suits the vineyard, and that's really why basically we look at each barrel as its own lot, and we make sure that and then that way we can really decide whether or not that is truly something that we would want to, use, or if we move it from a different barrel, we want to taste it beforehand and make sure that that's like and also like it's different from, it's different from each kind of, time you taste it. Like, if you're tasting it at 3 months, you're tasting it 6 months, 9 months, it really is ever evolving. And I think you can't make jerk decisions about, okay, this is it, this is what it is. But there's really obvious things that do pop through when you are making those types of decisions about what varieties really handle oak and what don't.
For sure. I think it's a very thoughtful thing to do, and something that my fellow colleague, Dr. William Kelly, is all about, trying to figure out which Cooper from which forest goes best with which vineyard that he's trying. And I know he's super geeky about it over there in Burgundy right now. Like he's asking all the crazy, Cooper questions with all the cool.
He should talk to Dan McCarthy at McCarthy and Shearing in Seattle, because I one time tasted with Dan, and he was like, "Did you use the Card Prestige?" This was years ago. I don't use the Card Prestige anymore, but he said, and I said, "Yeah, like 2 barrels out of like 14. How did you even do that?" And he has an incredible, for some reason, memorization of what, like, I think of how those barrels do really work with the wines. And he does it. But he's been doing this forever. But there's some people that really can nail it.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with Mark Ryan last year about a wine I was tasting and what types of barrels they use, and they said, "No, we use 100% this." It's like, no, I get something, and I said, "I think it's this." They're like, "No." It's like, holy crap, we got 10 barrels from this one producer, and you're exactly right. But there's 200 barrels, so that's 1%. Like,
but you can taste it.
I mean, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, exactly. I would not be able to do that. I just know.
I think you can. You have a very talented palate.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about Night Owl before we go on to Owl and Crown?
I just think it could really use a lot more time.
I agree.
I think it is one of those wines that I think when you taste it in 2 years, it's just going to be pretty mind-blowing. But right now it has all the components. It's just,
Yes,
it's getting there.
exactly.
Yeah.
To me, right now, this is like cooking a perfect steak.
Yeah.
Pulling it right off of the griddle
And not letting it rest.
not letting it rest and just cutting into
Yeah.
it like great, and it's delicious. But like if you just let it
If
rest
you wait.
for that 15 minutes, it would have been so much better.
Yeah. Or you could open it and drink it in 4 or 5 days. That would work.
Yeah, I did that, and actually it actually showed best on the third day.
Yeah, it does. It just does not like, it needs air. It doesn't, it hasn't had any air. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I only rack it. Sorry. I only rack it right after mallow. So
Awesome. Cool. Awesome.
you have to keep them healthy though, because if they start they get stinky.
Yeah, they can start to spoil.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the Owl
and Crown.
Beautiful Reserve Estates Cabernet Sauvignon. I love the label. It's so cute. It's like,
I know. It's fancy.
right?
It's so fancy.
Yeah, very fitting too. With reminds me of the great RGB picture with.
Oh,
I was like,
don't make me cry. That is
2020's been tough. It sucks.
Well,
But that's why there's wine. We have
yeah, yeah.
So this is the 2017. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little briefly about it?
I think one of the a very kind winery let us in, and because we don't, I mean, this is just like any winemaker wants to like get another winemaker in their cellar because all they want to do is listen to what they're asking, because it's just you just learn so much. But we did a clone, like we don't have any real clonal studies that we've done at àMaurice specifically, and so I wanted to understand the Cabernet clones that were being planted in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody very kindly allowed us to go in and taste through all of their clones. I mean, and it kind of whittled it down for me, really liking 4, 6, and 8. But when it really came down to it, I just really love Clone 8, mainly because of its history in the state, and then also just the fact that there's just this whole lot of not fancy about Clone 8. Clone 8 Cab. It's just I guess maybe it's honest, like it's just a really honest interpretation of Cab.
It's sincere.
And it's very sincere, and it does an incredible job of doing its best. And I think that I really love about Clone 8, Clone 8 Cab. And and sometimes it does its best, and its best is to make, green bell pepper. But it will, if you wait and you're patient with it, and you really manage your canopy, and you do a rigorous job of pulling those basil leaves and making sure that there's no canopy near the fruit zone, mm-hmm. you can get beautiful expressions, especially and with Cab Franc in Washington State, that are just like, I mean, it just blow your mind, that are happy, and that are that really understand, they I feel like they know the earth better than we do, and that's kind of like where you go when you're looking at a plant, and you're looking at so we stuck with Clone 8, and we were thinking about planting. We've got this little patch that we were thinking about putting a winery at, but we were maybe like, and then so instead of doing that, we were like, well, maybe we plan a little bit more. But then we decided, no, let's just keep going what we got going on right now. And this Cab it's a joy to make. It's really fun to make. And we do it's about 40 to 50% new oak, and this is destemmed. I don't have the emotional fortitude to go whole cluster with this yet, but I do add stems back in sometimes. It depends on the stem, because I don't like the broken ones, but I do sometimes. I like it, depending on the year, you can do that without risking the idea that you would get more pyrazine out of it. But we just try and maintain the freshness as much as possible. It's extremely reductive. We don't do aggressive pump overs. We don't micro ox. We don't rack. It's all really reductive.
Yeah, it's a beautiful line. You can get the sense that there's robustness, there's richness. It's round, but it's also still tight. The expression, you've maintained the clarity and focus as the other bottlings, but there's this bottling is a bit more generous in style, and it has that oak just to kind of prop everything up and just frame it and lift it just to keep it still in balance. And it's beautiful. The one thing I do like about it is it still has a little bit of that green note,
Yes.
which is part of Cabernet's profile.
Yes.
I
and
think
we do not want to get rid of it. I think people try too hard to push the Cabernet too far, so they completely ripen it out. When they do that, I feel that they've lost just a little bit of the sincerity of what and the verve
Cabernet, what Cabernet offers. And I'm very glad that there's that just a little bit. It's not overly. It doesn't hit you in the mouth with green bell pepper. It's more soft, like sage.
Yeah,
like almost like that Subois kind of. It's delicious, super good.
And we really try and maintain that. We do in the fermenter. You can, if you are careful with, you can really manage some of that pyrazine out with temperature while you're fermenting.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful because it's really easy to cook the fruit.
Yeah.
So
you've got
we'll let the ferments get
leeway before.
Yeah, we'll let them get pretty hot before we cool them down. But you can get that kind of, if you're using, you can kind of beat up the greener fruit, and if you can't beat up the kind of the stewed, more overripe fruit, because it's just more delicate. I mean, it's just like when you pick up an overripe banana, the top's going to fall off. It's just more gentle.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. I like that.
Yeah, you can use it.
Right, very good. Awesome. Cool. It's a beautiful wine. Any last thoughts on your estates tasting today?
No, I just think they're a little tight right now. I don't know why. Usually they're a little bit more.
Well, I mean, they're still relatively young.
Yeah.
I mean, the Syrah is 18 and the others are 17. So
yeah,
give them time.
But they're, the artist is always the hardest on their art, so it's okay.
Yeah, right.
But
I understand that. I'm my own worst critic when it comes to creating dishes. And my girlfriend like, "Oh, this is delicious." Like, no, I should have seared it first and then flipped it and then added a little bit more salt or something. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's good. And just eating. Yeah, awesome. So we've got just a little under 10 minutes or so. So there's so many questions. I could literally just keep talking to you. You're so easy to talk to.
Oh, thanks. You're easy to talk to. I actually was so nervous when you first asked me this because, we had kind of met, but not. I mean, It was during harvest and I have amnesia.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of wine being drank at the time.
Yeah. And so I was like, but this is gonna be great when we finally got on the phone.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's been a blast so far. So we've seen your Rhone varietals, we've seen your Bordeaux varietals. Which do you prefer to work with and why? Like if you had to literally scrap either the Bordeaux varietals or the Rhone varietals.
Oh, geez, brutal.
I know that's
kill the children.
Question. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's a brutal question. But yeah.
I would love to say, that's a great question, and then think about it. But this is a horrible question. I don't know. I think I would make Sparrow.
Awesome.
I just love that. It's just, I don't know. It's the horse that got me there, and I will always absolutely love it. So I don't know if between Bordeaux and Rhone, I think I'd go Rhone. But I love making Cab.
Yeah.
If I could make Rhone and just Cab, then I would.
Cool.
That's my final answer.
Yeah. Last year, when I was in Seattle at the Washington State Wine Commission office, I did this thing where I do like the second look, where if I take certain bottles, whether there would be cult bottlings of $300+ or a bottle that is like so beautiful and floral, you think but it's like a souffle. It's beautiful now, but give it 10 minutes, it's going to fall apart. And I actually took your Sparrow, the Viognier, and I beat it up. It went 7 whole days last year, and then this year when you submitted the Sparrow, it literally went 7 days, and then I was like, cool, I'm going to put this in a windowsill, give it direct sunlight. I was a little brutal.
Poor baby.
And it still went literally about 12 to 14 days.
No way.
For people who enjoy wine and they don't want to finish it, have faith that the Sparrow will do you right. You can keep it in your fridge. Next time you submit the Sparrow, I'm going to put it in my fridge and literally keep it in there for a month or two, and then take a note of how long it took to go bad. But the Sparrow is incredibly stable, and you're killing it.
Awesome.
These varietals. So yeah.
We use the restaurants love it because they don't have to gas it. That they can cork it and they just leave it there. Sometimes it'll even like blow the cork out, and they're like, "What happened?" CO2 just likes to go.
Natural CO2. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
So what's next for yourself? Like, where do you see your brand in 20 years time?
20 years time. I just hope the world's in a better place.
I concur.
I think I don't see us wanting to get bigger or do. I think that the understanding what we have and what we're cultivating and staying small. I think the dream I was 8.5 months pregnant making 6,000 cases of wine.
That's great.
It was a beautiful chaos because every pregnant woman, well, if you feel good, every pregnant woman will know that your brain is just like on fire that last month. Like you're just going for it.
Yeah.
And everything makes sense to you. I think it's, and so I think that that was a lot of fun, but I just think for, now that, we're just really looking forward to kind of getting to know the land and getting to know the vines and still and staying small. I don't see us doing, besides my dream. Do you want to know my dream?
Sure, absolutely.
I would love to make Alta Adige Kerner.
Love Alta Adige Kerner.
That would be my
Abba's use it.
Whoa!
I used to buy
that would be like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
It'd be so much fun,
So
but
good.
I don't
So
know. I don't know. I can't really live there, so
Yeah.
I'd rather just there's a lot of fun in repetition, and so I think that there's a lot to learn from repetition. I think that's what we want to do, and just keep getting better. Just keep getting better. Keep learning.
That's awesome. I tell you what,
being curious.
If you ever make Alta Adige Kerner, can I please be the first person to try it?
No, just come make it with me.
That would be awesome. Even better.
I've got my husband thoroughly convinced that it's a great idea. So
it's amazing.
So I think we just need to get on it.
Just move up there, drink Schiava and eat speck and
I know.
Do it.
I'm not the biggest speck fan. Sorry.
Yeah.
We have to differ. Well, I'll get prosciutto and you can get your speck.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, no, that's a dream. That's a
Seriously.
dream.
I'm dipping back into the Fred again. I just have to.
Good.
It's showing so well right now. I love it.
Oh, my husband just commented. He's in.
He's in. Perfect.
He's
awesome.
in, and I'm sure my brother and everybody else will do it too.
Everyone.
The whole family.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I won't keep much longer. I know that Instagram is going to kick us off within the hour, so we're just 2 minutes away. Do you have any parting thoughts or last words for us today?
Oh, we appreciate you, and we really appreciate what the Advocate really has done for Washington wine, and so we just are really, we're really grateful.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure. You're so easy to talk to, and you make fantastic wines. So
thank you.
I would love to do this again sometime once once COVID is done. It's a shame that it all happened this year because you were on the roster to meet up with in person because you'd been on the list for quite some time, and I was like, just couldn't make it last year. But this year it was supposed to happen, and it is what it is. So we will connect soon, and we will have more discussion, more conversation, and maybe even pop open some Kerner.
That would be awesome.
Awesome.
Take care. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Until then, keep it locked here until next Wednesday, 1 p.m. So next Wednesday, the 30th, it's going to be a double header. Lisa Pretty Brown, Master of Wine, will be chatting with the one and only Chateau Angelou from Bordeaux. Very beautiful stuff. I believe that is 10 a.m. On the 30th, and then I follow at 1 p.m., turning my sights back towards South Africa, where I connect with the one and only Mr. Chenin Blanc, Mr. Ken Forrester. I'm going to try some beautiful wines. Stay tuned. Until then, stay safe, drink well, and be kind to others.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.